Did you guys see how Melissa did a great job of having a professional, slow rate of speech? Because generally when we get up there, we talk too rapidly. And that was excellent.
Yes.
I know it sounds like a little thing, but you'll see people in Philly, left and right, speaking too rapidly, and it puts everyone on edge, and we stop listening after a few moments. Well done.
Thank you.
I just speak fast.
I worked on that actually because
I'm just like, I have so many things to say, I can't wait to say all of them. Let's go. I'm like, God damn.
And Elizabeth will you'll go through the presentation coaching once you're there, because that's wonderful. And it's theater people, and they're great.
Well, hello, my name is
You need your
Elizabeth.
slides up.
Oh, wow. Oh, did you unplug it?
oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, it's
I
okay.
like didn't. I forgot you were going.
Melissa
next.
just sabotaged.
Oh
It's
my.
cutthroat here.
I thought you guys liked each other.
So that's.
Hello.
Wonderful. Hello, my name is Elizabeth Themis. I'm studying CCM vocal pedagogy here at Shenandoah Conservatory, but my bachelor's degree is in vocal performance, classical. So I feel very strongly about bridging the pedagogical gap between classical and CCM pedagogy. I've also worked as a collaborative pianist for about 6 years, and one of the discrepancies I've noticed between musical theater and classical undergraduate studios is the systematic emphasis and incorporation of the skill of riffing and melismas. So vocal performance majors are generally required to sing melismatic music. It's part of being a well-rounded singer, whereas many musical theater undergraduates are sort of left to their own devices when it comes to the contemporary equivalent of melismas, which is riffing. Before I go any further, I just want to define a vocal riff in this context because it can mean a couple of different things. A vocal riff is a rapid melodic embellishment consisting of multiple successive pitches on one syllable. So I just wanted to share one of the most popular examples of riffing in the media.
When there's too much drama at school, all you gotta do is walk away.
So why does it matter if our students can riff better than this little girl? Well, in reviewing industry on the musical theater, in reviewing data on the musical theater industry, I determined that riffing is absolutely a vital skill set. A recent study that analyzed job postings on Backstage.com for singers aged 18 to 24 found that 25 and 30% of all audition postings come from the pop rock and contemporary styles, respectively. In addition, 40% of the highest paying jobs are from the pop rock sector. And besides the study, pop rock songs need to be in musical theater students' books. Audition panels are very frequently requesting straight pop or straight rock songs not from a musical. So if your students can't riff, they're behind the game and are less likely to get hired. So I set out to provide both a visual representation paired with an acoustic analysis of a high-level riffer, accompanied with live recordings. So it was sort of a lengthy process to get to the final product I'm going to show you. I chose to excerpt riffs from Natalie Weiss's Breaking Down the Riff series, mostly because she's known as a high-level riffer, but also because it's one of the only examples of a cappella high-level riffing on YouTube, because obviously riffs are usually performed within the context of a studio or a live performance. And so because these are a cappella, I was able to be sure that what I was analyzing in Pratt, which we'll talk about later, was the actual singing and not instrumental background. So I first used a YouTube clipper to clip every instance of Natalie Weiss riffing a cappella from the Breaking Down the Riff series, and then I compiled them and analyzed them in Pratt and an acoustic analysis software. I also plotted the first and second formants from Pratt on a vowel chart. I did them precisely in Excel, but it wasn't as visually effective, so what you're going to see today is an approximation using Photo Editor. I then screen recorded every riff in Pratt and overlaid the screen recording onto the YouTube compilation as well as a vowel chart. So here's the result. Oh my God.
Hey,
neat on its own as a tool, as a tool for teachers to understand riffing in a couple of different contexts. But some research conclusions came out of this. So I gathered some information including about the visuals, the acoustic analyses. I also looked at textual and harmonic information. So in terms of the first and second formants that I collected from Pratt, I did show you approximations in the video, but this is a precise vowel chart that I used Excel for. As you can see, it mostly lives in ah sort of land with a very high first formant, which is indicative of a narrow vocal tract associated with CCM singing. So it's just good to know that nothing crazy is going on, but it's pretty much what you would expect for rapid melismatic singing. Here's a compilation of the mouth shapes of every riff in the midpoint of each riff. So as you can see, even though it's a fairly small sample size, Natalie Weiss definitely has a strategy, and it is a megaphone strategy. You can see she has like the wide mouthed, again, typical for CCM singing. So it's just good to know that nothing crazy is going on, that it's pretty much in line with what we think of when we think of CCM technique. I was also curious about whether songwriters and artists put in specific riffs for specific reasons. I was wondering if they chose to riff on vowels that were conducive to riffing, but a cursory glance at this shows no real trend in the vowel direction, only in the vowel modification direction, as we saw earlier with the vowel chart. These also don't seem to be particularly important words, even though the phrases themselves are generally emotional. That tends to be the impetus of pop songs anyway. So there don't seem to be trends in either direction. So rather than writing a song or choosing to riff in places that are easier for riffs, it seems like riffs are being modified for the song. The last thing that I noticed from these is that the vast majority of these riffs are built around the blues and pentatonic scales, which is not a surprise. If you review literature about riffing, that's generally the case. But I think there are a lot of benefits to including blues and pentatonic scales in the voice studio. There's aural exposure, so if you can supplement your scales with blues and pentatonic scales, your students will be more likely to sort of have that in their voice, to speak colloquially. It's also super easy to write exercises based on the pentatonic and blues scales, which means you have sort of unlimited options. So I think one of the best ways to include these is progressive difficulty, and we'll show you what I mean. But first, Seth is going to grace us with his piano skills, and we're all just going to sing through the blues and pentatonic scales to get a feel for it, and then we're going to look at some exercises I composed. So let's start with the top. Let's sing it on solfege. Can we have a starting finish? Ready? And. Do, re, mi, sol, la, do, la, sol, mi, re, do. Pretty simple. I've included solfege for the pentatonic scale. Let's try that one. Do, re, fa, mi, sol, re, do, re, sol, mi, fa, mi, do. Pretty simple, easily incorporated. So I took the liberty of composing a couple of examples because I have no composition background and this was super easy to make. So let's all sing this ascending and descending blues scale. I like to sing a blues scale. I like to sing a blues scale. So this is an example of maybe the first introduction to a student new to the blues scale. When they get a little bit more comfortable, we can make it a little bit harder. So let's try this one. Maybe a little bit slower for this one. So, and. I like to sing a blues scale. I like to sing a blues scale. And one more for the student who really wants a challenge. Feel free to scoop. Ready, and. I like to sing a blues scale. Yeah, so thank you, Seth. These are some of the examples of the ways you can build aural familiarity with the harmonic basis of riffs, as we've seen from the earlier video. So some considerations for this research overall. Natalie Weiss is probably using different cameras for these, and she's also a different distance away. So when we look at the data I gathered from Pratt, I think intensity is pretty useless just because relative to each other, because you don't know what she was using and you don't know how far away she was. That's why I looked primarily at the first and second formats. And also there's the consideration of the individualization of formats. Not all vowels are created equal, and it's very much depends on the person's vocal tract and the listener's ear. So even though I think I have a fair amount of confidence in the vowel chart that I presented earlier, just based on how many plot points I had, it's definitely not 100% ah or ah all the time. In the future, of course, we would all love a larger sample size. Particularly I'd like to see with both sexes. I would also like a more frequent analyses of the formants in Pratt in relation to the vowels. So rather than analyzing the entire riff, I'd like to take just sections and do it that way and then average them out. So I hope that this video serves as a helpful tool for teachers to better understand riffing. It's our job to prepare singers for the industry that they are entering and that they seek jobs in. And I really believe that riffing is a super vital skill to have these days. So I hope that this is a good tool. Well done. Any questions?
Did you post your video on YouTube publicly for people?
I will.
You should, because there's a good chance that 1 million people will watch that video.
It
and
might
you
be
will
good
make
to ask
Natalie Weiss
permission
yeah.
first.
Yeah.
Permission, yeah. I'd send it directly to her. She would.
I'm
She
sure
was high.
she'd be super excited
Yeah,
about
that's
it.
really cool.
Yeah.
Other questions? Can we get the exercises? 'Cause
Yes.
I wrote this in my notes to you, but I would totally use those for teaching the blues.
Yeah, absolutely. And some other resources, Bob Stoloff's Vocal Improvisation is a really good book, and Elizabeth Howard's, Elizabeth with an S, The Vocal Power Method include examples of these. There's not as many as I would like, and I think it's really easy to compose them yourself, but that's some good resources if you're looking to get started too.
Do you have your references after the thank you slide?
I just had one, just one in the study, your study. The rest is just sort of,
Who's at the bottom of the stack?
yeah.
Awesome job. Elizabeth.
You deserve all these bucks. But I asked about registration earlier, but that's something
We love
always-
registration.
We do love registration. Did you look into at all like what kind of registration was being used? Because one of the as a CCM singer and as someone who riffs, I find that one of the most difficult things is when I have to flip in the middle.
Yeah,
And finding
absolutely.
where to do that.
That was something I thought about. It's really difficult. That's like a whole other thing. And when you're just listening, you get the impression that it's primarily TA oriented, but then on the oo vowels, the vast majority of the oo riffs are actually, I think, I didn't put it in Voce Vista, but orally I think are more head dominant. So I would be really interested to see that data as well, but I didn't do any formal investigation.
Cool.
Great, thank you.